So this session is specifically about S-Spec. It's an open discussion. We're going to go through some points that we're clarifying, some comments that have come from the industry, and we're looking at how we can expand or reduce the number of attributes. So this is all about the feedback coming back from you folk, because you're all subject matter experts. We have people from industry here. We have people who are our end users. You know, don't hesitate to put a chat box in a chat box comment to introduce yourself. So I want to start off with talking about the two kinds of specifications that we have, the existing and the new. Some of you may be familiar with them. Now, through your login, you will have the opportunity to download two documents. And one is a specification for existing assets. And essentially, what you use that one for is if you're doing audits in the field, retrospective data capture, if you've just started with A-SPEC and you want to see the kind of attributes to collect, then you use these as an opportunity for all of your existing assets. And the document on the right, which is for the consultant developer specifications, that's for subdivisions, capital works, you know, renewed or rehabilitated works, and also for community projects. These two documents are completely aligned. And we've used version 2.0.5 as the basis for creating the existing asset specification. So I'm just going to, next couple of slides, I'm just going to show you what that looks like. So there are three categories of the existing assets, and what we've done is we've categorized every attribute in every table. So there are three primary categories as outlined on this page. So, for example, if you look in the document 2.0.5 and you look up gravity sewer pipe, here is the table that you will see. It's pretty simple. You know, it's no different to any of the other specifications. Now, when we look at the one for the existing assets, there's an additional column, and you'll see that we've got the three categories: core, requirement, optional, or required, and may need more research. And as you can see, we've categorized every attribute. So when you're looking from a data capture perspective, you know, for existing assets, these are the kind of things that we expect are practically available to capture. Now, it may be that an attribute that's classified as YR, your research uncovers that you can't find any information, in which case it may be you may need to put a default value in there. So we have our first question. And our first question is, have you utilized the new existing assets specification? So feel free to go into your Menti and just respond to that. Okay, that's giving us a sense of where everybody is at the moment. It's still, these specifications are still quite new. We're seeing a broader uptake with local government, particularly as they're asking for audits out in the field, and they're using the specs as a basis to collect their inventory information. Okay, so please don't hesitate to continue with responding to that. Yep, so it's a resounding no at this stage, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. We just haven't had the opportunity to be exposed to that as yet. Okay, code lists. So let's look at code lists. As you may be aware, these are openly available for download on the website as a spreadsheet. And Gabby is going to talk about them through his session a bit later on this morning about the API that's available. So I'll just give you a sneak peek at it. This is what the front end looks like. You know, I won't say any more at this stage. I don't want to steal Gabby's thunder, but he's got some information there that he will present to you about that. New codes. Okay, so what we're going to talk about is our process, right? So the instances for changes. So these are typically the instances for changes to occur. And look, requests come from various sources, from the community, including ourselves. So this slide represents the 4 instances that we're likely to see, and I'm going to give you some examples of that. So for example, change the description. You know, we're spending a lot of time and effort on harmonizing and standardizing our responses, and we want to make sure that we don't create ambiguities because of our lack of attention to some of the details. So in this case, you can see that the support structure material table has a C comment table. And the purpose of the C comment is that if a code doesn't exist in here, then we can use the C comment as a code and then populate the comments field. However, we've started off okay, showing support structure material if it's not listed. And then we have made a typo with stating then the new source is to be listed. These are the kind of instances that we're making sure that we resolve in our specifications so that we have consistency and standardization across all of our tables. Removal of ambiguity. Okay. So what we've now seen, and this has been brought up by some consultants who are using these tables for data capture, is that we have under access point material, we've got a code for precast concrete. What we want to do is we want to separate out where we've got a mix of method and material because it's not really an access point material. So what we're intending to do is to remove the material from the construction method. We actually have 2 attributes in that particular table that reflects the construction method and 1 the material. So what we're proposing to do is to remove precast concrete as an entry and only have concrete as the material. So effectively, we already have concrete listed on the left-hand side of the table. Precast concrete will no longer be available as a material option because under the access point construction method, we already have a method of precast. So that way it will remove the ambiguity there. So you can see that we've gone past a couple of Menti questions. So I'm going to just catch up on our Menti questions right now. So the first one is that code changes. We've mentioned that we have a number of instances where we have code changes. What I'd like you to do is respond to this question and that is we've got 4 options there of how we would communicate to you the changes. And we've come up with these 4 as a result of the previous forums that we've run. So the 4 options are: for minor changes, we'll communicate with you by email. For major changes, we'll communicate with you via a workshop or a webinar. With our documentation, we'll continue with the highlighted changes, and we'll also have a summary of changes in a separate document. So this is how previous participants of the forums have responded. So please take a moment of your time to respond to this.
Come on, George.
What? Who said that? Okay, so let's continue on. So great. So we're getting some good responses there. Thank you very much. And that slide will be available. We'll move on to the next one. So the next one was, if you selected other in the previous slide. Oh, did we? We didn't have another, did we, Gabby? Let me see.
I thought we did.
Oh, no, it looks like we've deleted that, so we'll
Okay.
forget that other slide. Removing ambiguity with codes. So we spoke about the ambiguity around precast as a material and removing it as a construction material and keeping it there as a construction method. If you agree with the proposed changes or not, please please complete this questionnaire. Great, so I think we're on the right track with that, and I'll definitely go back to the consultant that made this apparent to us at the start. He'll be very pleased to know that this will be one of the changes that will be occurring in the specs. I'll give you another 30 seconds just to complete this questionnaire. And of course, look, it may or may not be relevant to you, but and that's okay. Cool. Okay. Now, in this case, we've also created some ambiguity in that we've got black brute as a pipe material, and we've got AG drains as a pipe material. Well, the reality of that is that black brute is actually polyethylene, and we already have an entry for polyethylene. And AG drains, or Aggie drains as they're called, is typically a slotted PVC pipe. So what we are proposing to do is to remove those as discrete entries and have them as aliases aligned with the polyethylene and the slotted PVC pipe. And what we'd like you to do, again, going back to our Menti poll, we'd like you to have a look at what the next question is. Let me see, what have I done with my Menti poll? Here we go. Oh. I think I've closed my Mentipoll. I can't see it. Excuse me for a moment. I just have a technical hitch to deal with. Gabby and Kelly, would you mind, I'm just going to put myself on mute for a moment. Would you mind just having a conversation with people to gauge what their response is to this while I address?
I'll make a comment. Rex asked about Blue Brute, and Rex, there is a Blue Brute, but that's got a different code. So it's similar to a Black Brute, and it's these kinds of things that people asked us to identify, to clarify, make sure that ambiguities are clearly addressed and removed if possible. Kelly, did you want to add something?
I was going to promote our LinkedIn page.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it'd be really good if, but we'll talk about that at the end. Go, George. Back to you. Looks like you're ready.
Yes, thank you for that. And yes, Blue Brute is also another option for us to add. And really, it just comes about from people requesting that to be added. Our code lists are completely dynamic. We don't, they can be updated any time. What we're working on is a mechanism now so that we can communicate those changes to you quite quickly, and that's one of the intentions of using the API. Okay.
George?
Yes.
George, it's Roger Harrop here.
Hello, Roger.
Just in relation to the G'day. Just in relation to AgDrain,
yes.
I noticed that you're mentioning that slotted PVC is the most common.
Yes.
But, traditionally, in amongst existing drains, there may well be the old porous earth, almost the porous earthenware that's there. Now, is that provided for further down the code list with an alias of Aggie drain?
Yes, we have vitrified clay.
Okay. Yep.
As an option. Yeah.
Yep. Fine.
Yeah. So so good point that you've raised there, Roger. Yeah, we're endeavouring to go with the pipe material, whether it's used as an Aggie drain or not, is really, case by case scenario. We want to make sure that we have the appropriate pipe material available for listing.
Yep.
I'm just going to bring up my Word documents so I can refer to things a bit later on. Okay, now this is just an FYI. Sometimes we get requests about spelling. And here's a good example, fibre versus fibre. Very simply, we've gone with the Commonwealth English and versus the American English. So we reflect FIBRE throughout our specifications. And now I'm crossing my fingers to make sure that we don't have FIBER in there anywhere. But just to give you a sense of, how we deal with these sorts of scenarios. Okay, now here's something really important to focus on. Can I use all the codes for both the existing assets and the new assets? The short answer is no. There are some codes that you cannot use for new assets, and they include codes for capturing from aerial photography, or digitizing from 1 to 2500 metric mapping, or on-screen digitizing, or anything else that doesn't reflect that it's been captured in the field. A field note reference, a field book reference counts for as constructed data because of the kind of measurements that are recorded in there. But these codes for aerial photography, 1 to 2500 mapping and similar type things will not be available for new assets. And so that then becomes a non-compliance. So it's really critical that when you're doing your validation that you look at the ranges that are in those code lists. And, and part of our work is to make sure that we don't have a code list that's got 200 entries in there if it's not relevant to that particular attribute. And we'll have some historical codes. For example, in our pipe codes, in our pipe shape, there are egg-shaped sewers that were built historically, and we have that code in there available in case another one gets built like that, but it's mostly to record historical assets. This appears to be an ongoing debate. Unknown is not a valid value for new assets, and not applicable does not always apply to new assets. This comes up quite regularly, and it's often because we get a comment from a consultant, a surveying consultant, that says, well, the engineering consultants aren't giving us the data, so we need the unknown or the not applicable value. Our response to that is they are not relevant for use with new assets, because someone in the project has signed off on what the design was, so they know exactly what the characteristics are of that particular asset's installation. And what it's highlighting is that there is further communication and education required across the full spectrum of data provision. So we know a lot of consultants do a great job in the collation and the delivery of the asset data, but we also know that there's a gap between the timing of when information is passed on from the managing consultant to the consultant who's preparing the data. And that's really what we want to bridge the gap. So in this Menti question, what we're asking you is, how can we support you in being able to deliver, all the data that's necessary and to get the message across. So the Menti question here is really an opportunity to just jot down some of the things that you think would make a difference for you in being able to get the data that you need. And it might be something that we need to do. It might be further education. Whatever your experience has been will be really important to get a sense of that right now. So we'll give you a couple of minutes to do that so that we can get a sense of what's of interest and importance to you. Yes, we're getting some good responses here. Yep, great. I love the one about transparency for consortium members to contact each other for discussion. Yeah, now, in that regard, we're happy to put you in touch with each other. What kind of mechanism are you thinking about? You know, maybe a, you know, Kelly, could we do it through our LinkedIn page?
We could do it through our LinkedIn page, and I'm currently just picking through the names on the list on the screen and sending you all a link to the LinkedIn page so that you can follow it and start receiving, you know, relevant information. So, yeah, that's a great.
Yes. Yep, I like it. So thank you very much for your contribution to this one. Okay, so that's still open. Feel free to put any more comments as they come down. I'm going to open the next question for you and then present the next slide. Okay, data integrity. 4 aspects to this. And I'll start off with interpretation, as we've got it there as number 1. So the first part is that, you know, we request that you become familiar with the PDF documents. They are rich with interpretations to support you with your capture. There's a lot of time and effort being put in there and consultation with subject matter experts, which are the consultants and the end users, about how to interpret design drawings and how to represent them as simple features, points, lines, or polygons. And you are always welcome to contact us either through the A-SPEC website or directly. Case sensitivity in data links. This is coming up a bit at the moment, and yeah, it's a bit of a concern for me, because there's a lot of effort that's gone into consultants to prepare, in this case, the area of works polygon. And as you can see, a lot of effort has gone into the naming of the attributes, the nomenclature of the attributes, the, you know, whether it's uppercase, lowercase, the underscore. Yet everything has come across as a string, 254 length, character length. So essentially, when I've dug deeper into this, what we're discovering is that some of the packages that consultants are using to export or to create the A-SPEC data and export it to a format to be delivered to council are not paying attention to how that package goes to the default values. Now, we've been asked to review some of these data sets by our end users, and we have a common format that we use, that we respond to, and this is the first trap that we see, that people think that it's okay just because you've entered a value that fits within the permit number that you just provide the default value. It's actually not, because when we look at what is specified in the documents, we see that the permit number is 20. And I've had an argument with a consultant to say, well, I can guarantee you that I've put in 20 characters or less. What does it matter if I provide you the default value? Well, it does make a difference, because it doesn't support the validation process. The validation process will check on those values. The validation process will then either reject or accept that submission. So we want to be able to create confidence and reduce the number of instances where submissions are returned. So we're a strong advocate that you look at the specifications, have a look at each table. And when you're starting out, we've got some sample data that we can provide you. And Gabby's also going to talk to you in the tech session about what we can do to deliver you some SQL extracts to assist you in setting up your environment. Now, graphical representation. I want to give you a couple of examples. This is the third element. And we're often asked, how precise do we have to be with elements and matching to other elements and those sorts of things? So the intention is to represent what's there in the ground, particularly when it's subsurface. So let's have a look in the case of a support block. Now, if we put a point there, that's okay. You can show that there's a point there, but you don't actually get to see the difference that it makes with a dial before you dig inquiry. So we advocate that a polygon is there. Now, in doing that, the user gains confidence in their asset location, particularly with dial before you dig, as I mentioned before. So the second example I want to provide is around pipe alignment. So here's a typical configuration, and you can see that the pipes are joined not necessarily in the center of a pit structure or access point on the right hand side, an irregular shaped one, but we do that so that we have connectivity between the assets, so we can build some asset intelligence in the networks. Now, as you can see, the pipe comes into the edge of the structure and then has a vertex placed in it so it can be diverted to a common point. And that way we can create the connectivity there. Now, there's no drama if you want to choose a point as your main feature in your GIS environment, because your network tracing and everything that you do around that relates to point features. So here's the trap. You can place a point and you can move all of the attributes of that particular access point to that point. No problem. This is the trap. If you're then going to join lines point to point, there is the potential to misrepresent the alignment of a pipe. And that's the biggest risk that we see to any organization in misrepresenting the alignment, again, with a dial before you dig inquiry. You know, we know that there are over 1 million road openings a year, and there are, I don't have the dollar value, but it'd be interesting to do some research to see what the dollar value is of repairs that are needed because of instances where infrastructure isn't where it was said it would be. So you can see that we have a Digital Hive logo there, which is our next Menti question.
George, just before you go to the question,
Gabby.
Rex has just made a comment.
Yes.
I think be good to just repeat that.
Repeat Rex's comment.
Yep.
That happens a lot with the pump station infrastructure. Yes. So in our specifications, we really focus quite strongly on these fundamental principles to show the extent of the features. So thanks for raising that, Rex. Is there a follow-up question to or comment to that, Rex? You know, and feel free to type. I'll continue on and we'll come back to your question. Thanks, Gabby. Okay. So the question here is going to our Menti poll. I'll just drag it up from the bottom. Is accuracy and precision of capture important to you? Yeah, I'll just give you a little bit more time to respond to that. And of course, if it's relevant to you. Mm. Okay, great. So we can see there's an overwhelming desire or importance to accuracy and precision of capture. Great. And I think we have a follow-up question to this one too, don't we? Let me see.
Yes, we did have, but I'm not.
There you go. If you did not select yes in the previous slide, or if you have extra comments, please provide more detail. Yeah, great. So that is open for you for to respond to. So I'll continue on. Yeah, so thanks Rex, and for everyone who's online, you can see Rex's comment, which is a follow-up about the time and effort required to do the rework. And if you've got a large number of pump stations and all of the related infrastructure, yeah, it makes a big difference. You know, some of the information that I've seen or studies that I've seen around the cost of capture at time of construction versus cost of capture at a later time is somewhere in the order to 50 to 100 times more expensive to capture the data after the fact. So, you know, it really makes a difference.
And then you've also got all of the grey head knowledge that continually just walks out the door. So it's just like, well, what's happening at pump station 11? Oh, I don't know. Bruce was taking care of that. Yes. Where's Bruce? Where's farmers now? So it's, yeah, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that. And we want to reduce those nightmares, that's for sure. Okay. So moving on.
Not unless you're Bruce in the Bahamas.
Yes. Well, I don't think he's got any issues there. Okay. So look, this is the segue to this. This is a heads up for a future discussion. And what we're looking at doing is adding requirements at the asset class level for the level of accuracy and precision for capture of assets. And as you can see on the left-hand side, we've got codes A through to G and then not applicable. And on the right-hand side, vertical precision. So of course, when we're talking about pipes with vertical precision, yes, we might have plus or minus 20 millimeters there, but it's also dependent upon the grade. So we're really mindful of that. So this is a paper that we've created for conversation, which we will distribute for comment, and to see if there's acceptance for its adoption and incorporation into our next update of the specifications. So again, a Menti question. Would this make a difference to you, having these kind of, and I'll just slide this down again, would it make a difference to you having this kind of precision for level of accuracy, to indicate the level of accuracy and precision for each kind of asset in capturing it? Great. Okay, cool. Let's see if we've got the follow-up slide on that one, Gabby. I'll check that out on my phone.
George?
Great. Yes. Roger?
I guess this, something like this just helps with standardization overall and quality of data. And it strikes me that the levels of accuracy, as long as everybody is agreed upon the criterion, then, there cannot be a problem. And particularly if you're looking at criticality and the compatibility of the items with each other.
Yep, understand that. Did you want me to comment on that, or are you just making a statement, Roger?
Look, I think it's a bit irrefutable, so I don't expect a response.
Okay, great, thank you. And as you can see, there's a follow-up. There's a follow-up question. If you did not select yes in the previous slide, oh, someone's playing with my slides.
Just go activate slide, George.
Okay, great. Thanks, Gabby. Okay, so if you did not select yes, and we didn't have that many people that didn't select yes, and you want to make a comment, don't hesitate to put a comment in here and then we'll review it. Yeah, and look, and again, Rex makes a good point about the requirement in New South Wales for their asset management plans as well as their reporting to IPART. Look, and I've just realised that I'm at a significant advantage to everyone and you're all at a disadvantage in I pretty much know everybody that's on this call, that's on this, but the people that are making responses and comments may not be known to everyone. So so just for future responses, if you're going to take yourself off mute to make a comment, just state your name and just the organisation that you're from. That would be great. And if you're putting in comments in the chat box, just state the organisation that you're from. I just want to say that Rex has been making a significant contribution here, and she's from Central Coast Council in New South Wales, and they're starting their implementation with S&W-SPEC. Okay.
Thanks, Rex.
Thank you. All right. So this is the fourth element, spatial relationships and connectivity. So I just wanted to give you an indication because it's not, we just don't look at these things as in silos. And it's indicative that data sets we provide for the specifications are never provided in isolation. So here's a good example. We've got an instrument transmitting device on the sewer main. And we've got attributes within that particular table for the instrument table that requests information about the feature it's linked to. So the type of feature. So you can select from whether it's a pipe, an access point, or whatever it might be. And then the linked feature ID. So this gives us some cross correlation to make sure that those assets that are being reported on are actually aligned to a particular network. And look, all assets are part of a greater whole, and we're identifying the specific relationships that make up the digital models on which we build these greater views. So this is an This was provided to you as an FYI around that. Okay, data delivery. So there are two elements to this, the data structure and the exchange format. And so when we talk about format, we typically talk about exchange format. When we talk about the structure, we're talking about what is outlined in each specification. And it's prescriptive. Yes, the code lists are dynamic and they're changing. However, the attributes and the tables are there. They're agreed to by the subject matter experts, you folk that are on this call, that are on this forum today. And there's a process that we go to modify that. So I just want to focus a little bit on the data exchange formats because they're changing all the time. So asset owners often have a specific format. They may specify, Esri shapefile, they may specify MIF-MID, they might just go with what the terminology in A-SPEC documents is to provide GIS-ready data. All of these that we've listed are acceptable exchange formats. So a CAD plus a CSV file or an Excel file is not necessarily an acceptable format because of the amount of work that it takes to translate the data from that environment into your information systems. So we're looking at future-proofing. So to future-proof the delivery process, we're actually advocating for GeoPackage. Why is that? GeoPackage is now the preferred standard for data exchange that's advocated by the Open Geospatial Consortium, OGC in brackets. So we recommend organisations move to this as the preferred format. Now we know that it may take time, you may or may not have the capability right now, but some of the advantages that we've seen are that you can actually, as you provide a GeoPackage, as it states, you can provide a package of information. So that means all the files in the one file. And maybe Gabby, you can, I'm putting you on short notice, but maybe you can show how a GeoPackage can be dragged and dropped into QGIS, and to see how easy that is from one file. And look, and there's no naming length limitations. It's a database format, so you can run database automation scripting. So there's a whole range of other advantages to it. However, as I said, all of these formats are available. What we're strongly advocating is that you move to this new environment. And if you need some assistance, just give us a call. So our next Menti question, which is coming up, is what data exchange formats can you provide / accept? So obviously, the consultants are the providers and the end users, the councils and authorities are the acceptors. Oh, that's a pretty even spread. One of everything. Oh, now we've got a couple. Yes. Okay, we're getting some movement. Yep, thank you very much. An interesting fact for you, Esri no longer supports shapefiles. It doesn't mean you can't use that format. However, it's not a supported exchange file format. And MIF-MID is still an acceptable and is still being supported, as is GeoPackage. and geodatabases. Our experience is that there's some complexity around geodatabase. If you want to know a little bit more, Gabby can talk about that through his technical presentation. Others, great. Happy to see what other exchange formats there are as we move on. So, data exchange formats, we've just completed that. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go on to some of the typical issues that come about. And you know, we've spoken a lot about the changes with code lists, with attributes. Which assets do I capture? How do we guarantee that we capture everything, particularly in a precinct? You know, if you're working, if you're working in your building and your business is around water and sewer assets, and what do you do in your precinct where you've got car parking, fences, landscaping, other? So to ensure that there is consistency with what is agreed to be captured, we've created the checklist, and it will sit in our A-SPEC overview document. We already have a listing in section 1.3 of the A-SPEC overview document that outlines all of these asset types and which specification to refer to. What we've now done is included on the right-hand side an asset owner checklist and the developer consultant checklist. So it's now available, and we're happy for you to request that of us. We've been sending it out to people who have been requesting it for use. And as you can see, we've also got the project type to identify what kind of project this is as you're handing over. And when should you use this? What we're recommending is that you use this as part of the design review stage so that you can identify what kind of assets are going to be handed over, and also the asset data that's expected to come with that handover process. So you get that signed off, then it's pretty clear what is expected, and then the consultants that have had this signed off with the asset owner can then give it to their surveyors or whoever's doing the asset pickup and collation, and they know exactly what needs to be done. We're anticipating this will be part of the education process to identify what data is needed. There's also other checklists that we have that a surveyor, one of our consulting surveyors in WA, created for himself and then provided to us, that he gives to the consultants to say, well, okay, I'm going to do the asset pickup for this, but I need you to provide A, B, C, and D on these particular asset types, and that will be used to populate the data that's delivered to the council or the water authority. If you also want to have a look at those, don't hesitate to contact us, and you can use the email that we've got on the screen. PDFs. We love our PDFs. Are they still required? Essentially, yes. Typically, the PDFs provide an overview of the complete project. Yes, the A-SPEC data is the source of truth for the digital data that's provided about those assets, but the PDF will give you what the holistic view of what's going on in that project. And there may or may not be some additional information that you collect from there that's not typically provided as part of the A-SPEC delivery mechanism. Part of our standardization and harmonization, we look at where we need to make modifications. So this was raised at one of our, prior to our previous forum. What we identified was that we are being inconsistent in the way that we have created the content and the QA validation for a unique ID. And as you can see here, in bold, we've got under content or provided by the asset owner. And the QA validation is if provided by the asset owner, then this identifier is to be used. And it's irrelevant whether it's for subdivision development or capital works project. What we're now seeing is councils are now recording, are looking at the assets that are going to be handed over to them, creating their asset IDs, and then providing them to the consultant as part of the design review process. So if that's the case, then we have that covered. What we're going to do is standardize the content and description and the QA validation across all of our specifications. There is some inconsistency at the moment. Photographs. How many images do I take? Yes. And how do I record it? Okay, so there's two questions there. How many and how to record. I'll deal with the recording first. So in the photo_ref attribute field, it's about recording what the image name is. Now, if you're going to, and that's simply all that there is to it. There's only probably room for one image name. So what happens if you take more than one image? Well, what we also suggest is that you create a catalog so that whatever photographs you take are linked back to that specific asset. So when it's provided to the asset owner, they know exactly what they need to collect. They know exactly what they need to link to their assets. Now, for a pipe, if you're going to take multiple photos, then our suggestion is you take them at the joints. And that will give some proof around what has occurred at those joints. Not saying it's essential, but it might be something as a consultant that you want to take into account and have the contractors do that as proof of what they've done. Currently, there's no proposed new assets. However, we want to give you an opportunity to suggest the kind of assets that you would like to have included as part of this. So we'll give you a minute to do this, to see if you can think of anything that's not currently covered in the spec.
Okay.
And what I'm going to do is I'll just give you a quick look at the kind of assets that are covered in the spec at the moment. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit more. Actually, I'll go to 2-page. Apologize if the screen is a little bit smaller for you. Okay, haven't quite got that right. So you can see we've got quite a number of assets. If there's other things there, like in the other structures, like you want to know about a chlorination unit, or you want to know about digesters and those sorts of things, then we would look at the kind of characteristics that you want to know about those and whether we can fit them into current tables such as mechanical equipment or electrical equipment, or what would be represented by other network structures. Yep, and whoever made that comment, interested in providing us with some more information, maybe if you put your name in the chat box, and then I'll follow up with you to get a sense of what you want to know about that. So in the access point table, we've got those as options. So it might be simply just differentiating. Thanks, Caitlin. Yep, so I'll definitely follow up with you to see what was what you see as a maintenance shaft versus an inspection shaft. I think it can be simply covered through our code list table for access point types. Okay, moving on. Area of works identifier. Okay, so we're going to add a new area of works identifier, and in this, one of the unintended consequences was that when we moved all the attributes into the area of works polygon, we lost the unique link to each of the assets within that particular stage of development. So what we're proposing to do is to create an area of works ID, which will sit in every table, and it'll be made up of the combination of the subdivisional project name plus the subdivisional project stage number plus a data construction. And it's going to look something like this. For a subdivision name, the area works ID will be this. So in each table, that will be a field that will be populated so that it can be quite quickly linked back to that development stage or that project stage. For capital works, or for capital works, it could look something like this. So really, the area works ID is a unique identifier that you get to create. The only thing that we're specifying is the format of the date of construction, which, as you can see, is 2019-05-29, which reflects the year, the month, the day. And if there's no day specified, then it automatically becomes 01. Okay, subsurface utility standard. So this is the last topic, and Gabby, I apologize for jumping in to your session for a few minutes, but you'll have an extra 5 minutes at your end to do what you need to do. So there's no need to rush through your presentation. Okay, so AS5488. I'm not sure if many of you are familiar with it. It's an Australian standard for subsurface utilities. And what it is to identify the method that you've used. And there's a quality level scale, A, B, C, or D. So it's the method that you've used to determine that there is an asset below the ground. And so, for example, quality A would be, it's an open trench, or it's a field note. I know exactly what's there. Whereas level D might be, well, I don't really know what's there. All I've got is a design plan, or I've got this sketch that someone's provided to me. So that's the lowest quality, and the least amount of certainty. So bless you. So the question that we have for Menti is, have you used AS5488 in your work? Okay, great. And for those of you that have, it'd be great to put a comment in the chat box, just so that we can also follow up with you and see how you've applied it. So from an A-SPEC perspective, we approached SAI Global as an agent for Standards Australia. So we have permission to create a roadmap from AS5488 to our D, S, and W specifications. So they are now aligned to comply with this. So if you have a contractor that has created their data to comply with AS5488, we now have a table that shows the additional fields to populate to have it comply with S-Spec. And for your information, both Gabby and I were on the technical committee reviewing this standard that was updated and released in 2019. Okay, so Gabby, thank you again for your patience. I really appreciate it. There's no rush for you. During this session, Gabby's going to take us through a number of things which are listed there, and yes, he'll talk about data integrity and he'll talk about training and the kind of data support that you can expect. So I will now hand over to you, Gabby, and make you presenter.
Yep. And
that includes, I'll let you run the Menti questions from there as well.
Okay. I'll just share. George, I'm going to have to very quickly log into Menti then.
Okay.
Just give me a second. It will happen fairly quickly. Okay, but I'll start. George did spring a surprise on me about the QGIS or the geo package. But I did find one that I could quickly look at. Now I'm just showing on the screen. So I've got QGIS loaded. GeoPackage is compatible with most of the popular GISs available today. And this particular one is just a data submission to Margaret River. So if I just take the GeoPackage itself, drag and drop it, and I'll just move this out of the way, you'll see that it immediately lists a bunch of asset classes that was in that geo package. Now I know that this one has got some old data and some data that was not right, but I'll just show you what happens. So if I go select all, so these are all the feature classes that's in that package, and I click OK, and if all being well, I will get all of the asset classes listed. This one is a particular one that I know about. What it's telling me is that there is something that is set to a wrong projection. I know that. Point is that if you had a geo package or somebody submitted a geo package to you, then you could ship a whole heap of asset classes all in one go. You don't have to, with a shapefile or a MIFMID, you have a collection of files that you need to ship. With a geo package, you can it's a click and ship just one file. What I can do, and I haven't done that with this one, but what you can do is you can actually store stored procedures. You can store the project file of either your Esri or your QGIS project. You can store that inside the GeoPackage so that the people on the other side who are receiving gets exactly what you've submitted. So it makes a lot of sense to be using GeoPackage, and if you're doing data validation, it's also easier to ship issues backwards, or to identify issues and to deal with them. That was just off the cuff. I'm going to just load something else, and then I will start my actual presentation. So
yeah, just a quick comment getting back to these format types that you mentioned earlier, George.
yeah.
out of 2 of the 4 councils we currently deal with, we just send them in native map info form, and that's the tab format, and they're happy with that.
Okay, great.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks for letting us know, John.
Look, it's John. What we're saying is, people will continue to specify different formats, but what we would like to propose is that people consider going over to the Open Geospatial Consortium, the OGC proposed standards. The idea is that this should become the de facto exchange format down the line, and organizations such as Esri and Pitney Bowes are all part of that consortium, and so down the line we may see that change coming through. Okay.
After the last week or the week before session, I did take a check in map info, and I noticed you can do geopackage format.
Yep.
Or can export that format.
Yeah. Yeah, and with map info, I haven't been able to check it, but it is possible with a lot of the other applications, and I think that with map info, it will be in the future, if it's not already, be possible to store even your stylization and your any other configurations that you want. Store it inside the geopackage so that it's actually a package, a complete package of data that is exchanged between organizations. Okay, I'm going to dive into my slideshow very quick. Digital Hive is an organization that George and I have developed together, and so it's a joint venture between us. So it's different from GISA or A-SPEC. It stands alone, and it does its own thing around support for A-SPEC and other projects. We don't just do A-SPEC, and I'm saying that specifically because there was a comment. Somebody was a bit confused earlier on. One of the things that we have supplied or that we have provided is we've provided data, or we are providing data support in terms of the current spec. So we've taken the current spec, we've converted that into schema definition files, so SQL files that you can create an entire schema in either Oracle or any of the other database formats that's listed over there. In the future, what we will also do is provide database maintenance release updates. So when the spec changes, we will give you a maintenance or an incremental update, basically with additions, deletions, and edits, and we'll just give you the SQL code for those changes, so that you don't have to go and redefine your schema. But it's like any other corporate GIS database update. If you've used the data support service that we offer, then that will help you to very easily go from one spec into the next, and it's not a major data mapping exercise that you have to go through and to try and keep up to date. So we want to make it easy for you to get a smooth transition from one spec into the other. We are also providing GIS project files. Now, at the moment, it's only in QGIS, but we are considering others. At that point, I am going to quickly jump out and do a demonstration. So what I've got over here is just the sample data, or some sample data, and if I was to add a new polygon, so say area of works, and I wanted to just create a new one, I'm just going to go and add something arbitrary here. Obviously the coordinates will come from a surveyor, and there is a process in which we can automate that. But what we're doing is visible in here. So what you're seeing on the screen is a list of all the attributes that's associated with that particular feature class. And you'll see that there's a bunch of them that's got little red marks, and they highlighted in yellow, reddish, orange, and that says that you've got to put something into that field, otherwise you're not compliant. Now I'm just going to be naughty and add some rubbish data in there. You will notice though that there's a few things that have been automatically entered. And those are elements that I've got a configuration file. I've gone in and I said, okay, every time I'm going to create an area of works, you know, for me, if I'm a surveyor, the design company is always going to be the same. It might not be, but I'm saying for argument's sake, it might always be the same. Construction company, I probably work for one company and that'll be the same. So I've gone and automatically identified certain fields, and those data elements are automatically entered. And you can see it was transformed by myself, and that was automatically captured. And there's an area of works ID that was also auto-generated. So what this will do, it helps you to speed up the process. I'm just going to add a few other things, and of course there's things like add a widget, the data widget, to make sure that if something is a date field, that's captured correctly. I'm going to show you one more. Don't want to spend too much time on all of this. I'll zoom in quite a bit, and the same thing here. So let's say we're capturing a pit, and apologies that I don't have that I didn't do the demo on sewer. I had every intention to do it, but I discovered a bug. So I'm not doing it on sewer. I promise you I'll have the bug sorted very quickly. So the same sort of thing, but what I want to show you here is that we've also got the drop-down boxes, and what you see here is we're providing you with the easy human-readable attribute names, but underlying, it's capturing the data in the correct attribute field, so that you don't have to say, oh, what does that attribute mean? I can't remember what is this particular thing. Fairly straight. It's quite straightforward, quite easy. You get exactly the name that something is called. Yeah, not everything can be automatically entered. So for instance, the street name, we need to have a proper street name in there, and I can't guess it. So, it's marked in red. You have to put in some street location, whatever. But what I have done is I've entered the not applicable in the location. We expect you, the users, to know that if the street name is populated, that the location has to be not applicable, and the other way around. So it doesn't, using this sort of automation and data integrity tools doesn't negate the fact that you've got to still understand what's going on in the specs. I'm not going to go through all of those, but you can see that there's a bunch of others, and they've all got drop downs that allows me to pick the right kind of information, so that I get the information that is compliant. This helps me to, it protects my data integrity, and we'll use the same sort of tools for data validation. Okay, I think that's enough of that one. I'll move on to the next item I wanted to address. So give us a second. So you've heard George talking about the Codelist API. Basically, it's a web service that helps us to maintain the code list in real time. It helps you to get access to code lists in real time. So there's a whole lot of extra information that the code lists, or extra functionality that the code list will make possible for you. I'm going to do a demonstration of the code lists very quickly. So just want to drag that across to my screen. All right. So the Codelist API has got a number of, there's actually a number of web services associated with this, with a bunch of data that sits in the background. There is a generic Codelist form which will allow us to capture code lists. So if an organization, like one of your organizations, have their own code list that they want to capture and share with people broadly, there is a way for them to do that. There is a mechanism to bulk load code lists. There is code list tables that's generic available, and then there's the public code list. I'll just show you the generic code list. This is the complete data set, and for maintenance purposes, it has things like a change request, whether a code list is active or not, and an application environment that sits in. So that application environment at the moment is A-SPEC, but it could be your extra code lists. What can I do with these sort of code lists? Well, I'll show you a few examples here. What you see here is a mixture of R and S and W, but if I filter these to all the S-Spec, then you get a complete list of codes that's available under Sewer. If you're looking for a particular code, you want to look for, you've got some clay and you're not exactly sure what are the clay type codes available as bedding material or ground swell, whatever, you can just type in to the description like I just did, and you get a list of all the codes that contains clay in the description. Alternatively, if I have a code and I don't know what it stands for, what it means, I can just take the code, type it in, and you'll see that FRP is a code that's used for lining material and pipe material, and in both cases it means fiber reinforced plastic. If I wanted to extract some, I'm just going to go a code list, I can just type it in there, and then I've got the ability to download those codes as a CSV or as a JSON file or as a PDF, and I can then use it in other applications. Now, I haven't spoken about the most important part of this, and that is how can I actually use it? You can browse it online like I've just done. You can set up real-time or regular downloads as a web service within your council or within your consulting company, and link that to your applications, or either on your mobile device or within your database environment. All of the major databases nowadays will have the ability to link to these sorts of things, and then you can use those code lists within your application environment, and so making it easier for people to actually gain proper access to any of the code lists. Rightio, there is a Menti that I want to jump onto. Now, George, I would have to remember which slide it was. Apologies, I accidentally went out. Have you? Good. Okay. George, I'm just going to kill this, and we can use yours later on.
Well, you'll need to be in it because you're presenting.
Oh, yes.
They can't see.
That's right.
So it's slide 15.
Okay, thank you. All right. So where are you likely to use a code list? In the field printed lists, in the field live on a connected device, in the field download on a device. It's a fairly equal spread of people who manually update these. And there is not a single person that says I won't use it at all.
There is
one.
Oh,
that's grayed out.
Oh, okay.
Okay. But I love this first one. There's one person that has memorized all of the code lists. That's impressive. Sorry, there's 3 people that have memorized all of the code lists. That is impressive.
I haven't responded to this, Gabby, so it's not me.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I won't say good luck to you, because I think some people will have the ability, but it must be pretty hard to keep up if there's any changes in the code lists and to have all the code lists available. Okay. I think the next one is also how do you currently refresh the code lists that you use? I'll just present that one. So how do you currently refresh the code lists that you use? If you can answer that one. Download from an A-SPEC, from the A-SPEC website on a regular basis. Refer to the PDF documents. Someone else provides the list for me, or I just don't know. Now, for those of you who download from the A-SPEC website, I don't know whether I mean, that's the right way to go. For those who download from the, or refer to the PDF documents, you've got to remember that the PDF documents are always lagging behind the A-SPEC website. So any code lists, any new changes to the code lists are updated on the live version available on the A-SPEC website. So the PDF document is going to lag behind in the future. Well, it's already lagging behind, George, am I right? Okay. George, if you're answering, you're on mute. Okay. I'll move on to the next. Someone else provides a list for me. Okay. I want to very quickly talk about another application that we've developed. I'm sorry, not that one. Apologies, that's not the one I wanted to talk about. It's this one. So we've also developed an API for construction image capture. So the specification requires images for all new assets. George spoke about photographs earlier on, and what we find is that there isn't a lot of photographs that's received, and sometimes it's difficult to deliver and to validate photos. The as-constructed, as-built image capture application we've developed is a phone app and a web app, if you like. And what it does, it allows you to capture a photo associated with the asset that you're surveying or looking at in the field. So the moment you're looking at it, you can capture a photo, and the application will then allow you to add more information about it. Now, I'm not going to demo it too much right now, because I have tried it on my phone. It works, but there's not much photos to be taken inside my office over here. But how we see this, and this is in beta at the moment, how we see this to be used is that it will enable organizations to find or to have progress on their project very clearly. So if the construction company takes a photo of the area, associated with the area of works, for instance, but just as the progress is the project is progressing, then we can build up some intelligence about what's happening. The intention behind this is that in the long run, we will develop an AI process that will assist in the interpretation of all these images, so that it will just give you another layer of validation in terms of what it is that's happening in the field and how that is working for organizations. Okay, that's enough about that one. The next one I want to talk about is very quickly training. So we've started offering training on QGIS. There's the basic training, there's some advanced, but then there's also using QGIS to capture A-SPEC data. And if there's interest in Python automation, then we can talk about that as well. As far as A-SPEC is concerned, we're developing, we're already offering overviews of understanding the specs, just a basic overview of each of the specs. And we look at asset class relationships. You know, none of these asset classes are standalone. There's always a bigger context. Most important here is that we are developing a certification program. A certification program that will be linked to the AQF, the Australian Qualifications Framework, and that is something that you would be able to add as a micro-credential as part of a bigger credential. And that's all from me. I think there is another Menti. I'm just going to go activate the slide and move on to the next one. Or George, is this now over to you? So the question is, I want to see more of A-SPEC data validation, A-SPEC data capture automation, or neither. If you could have a look at those for us. A-SPEC data validation. This is now the kind of automation that I very briefly showed in the QGIS process there. All right, so there seems to be quite a bit of interest in the automation, also a little bit in terms of data validation. Rightio. On that note, George, I think it's time to give it back to you, sir.
Gladly. Thank you, Gabby. That's pretty amazing. We always get a lot of value out of your contribution there. Okay. So, wrap up and what's next? This is something that we've spoken about for some time now, a certification process, and it's going to operate in two areas. One is the consultant end, and the other is the client end. Yes, the client end. And it's going to be, so that's the dual focus. So it's about how we're going to communicate and resolve issues. So for example, how does the asset owner address communicating an area of non-compliance? And how does the data provider address the issues such as non-compliance? So we're not going to go into addressing how you do your work. We may address the output or the outcome of how you do your work, but we're more interested in having a process in place and seeing what processes you have in place to resolve differences. Our experience has been that as you can see, there's no software that we sell around enabling A-SPEC. There's a whole lot of conversations around processes. There's a whole lot of conversations around understanding the specifications. But the main aspect of it is communication. And we're finding that when assumptions are made about something, then there's an upset. And that's the kind of thing that we want to resolve. We had a a situation about 12 months or so ago where a council in WA was presenting their submission to, a consultant in WA was presenting their submission to a council. And after the third time of it being knocked back, they cracked it, said, you know, we're gonna go to the ombudsman, industry ombudsman, and, you know, this is a restraint of trade. Every other council we provide data to accepts our data. Okay, so I was included in the communication, so I asked the consultant if it was okay if I had a look at the submission, and did the same with the council, and they gave me their permission. So I had a look at it, and I said to the consultant, I have some good news and some bad news for you. They said, okay, what's the good news? I said, I've looked at the submission. And they said, okay, what's the bad news? I said, I found more non-compliance. Well, how can that be? You know, everyone else accepts it. I said, I get that. Here are the things that I've found. And one of the traps that this consultant fell into was about the data types. And if you remember the slide that I showed you around the setting up the data fields with the correct data type and the correct length of data if it's a character field and so on, well, they fell into the trap of exporting their data, not looking at the export and delivering it in a format that was non-compliant and a structure that was non-compliant. So when I was in WA, I sat down with the consultant and had a look at their process, and were able to resolve it within about 15 minutes. However, that process had been going on for about a month and creating a bit of grief at both sides. I then spoke to the council and they said, oh yeah, look, I know that there's probably non-compliance, but I haven't had time. So we addressed the potential impact of that and how we were setting up the consultant for failure. My next port of call was to talk to one of the councils that the consultant had been delivering data to, and I said, oh, so you know, after all the pleasantries, said, so I believe you've been receiving data from Joe Blogs. They said, yeah, pretty good. I said, what have you been doing? Oh yeah, look, we've been getting it and we've been incorporating it. I said, you found any issues? Yeah, we found a few issues. We've just been resolving them. Have you told the consultant? No, we didn't bother. It was just minor for us. I said, okay. So here's what we've created by not communicating that there are issues. We've set up this consultant for failure, and this is what's happening down the track because someone else is actually sending it back to them, whereas you've got the capability to address it. Ah, I see. So to empower everyone in communication, we need to have a look at the whole chain of data delivery and the resolution of issues. And so the certification process is about whether organisations and individuals have processes in place to resolve them. And this will be part of an A-SPEC service that we provide. And in time, it'll start off being optional. In time, it will become mandatory. Changes. Okay, so on previous conversations, we have we've received feedback from consultants about how they would prefer to receive changes, and we've already addressed this with you, so I won't go to a Menti question about this. Digital twins, digital representation of the physical world. A-SPEC already does that. If the physical world is a building, then A-SPEC has a definition of what aspects to collect about that so it can be managed, and it's completely agnostic of what system it goes into. Yes, there are entity relationships, there are definitions and descriptions that suit the end user, and all of these, it's about mapping and aligning with the A-SPEC. So if if every consultant gives you the same kind of data, then and there are some specific formats that they give it to you in, then you only need to map those formats once and then understand or recognize which format the consultant is giving you the data in, so you can then map it into your system. So for us, a digital twin is what A-SPEC has been from day one. I just wish I would have invented that name at the start and asked for someone to chip in 10 cents into the money tin every time they used it. But we have, on a more serious note, we have a Menti question. And the Menti question let me see. Okay. And we've gone through this one. So the question is, what's your, I've got an incorrect phrase of that question. I apologize for that. What's your exposure to BIM, to 3D drawings, to linking to your asset management systems? You know, how are you what's your exposure to digital twins? And so we just want to get a sense of where people are at, you know, whether you're a novice, you'll be exploring it, won't be exploring it. Just if you could spend just a couple of minutes on that, or a minute on that, that would be great. Okay, so that will be open there. You may still be on one of the previous questions where we asked you to provide any other comments. So I'll have a look at that in a moment. Oh, here we go. Yes, we've had a catch up. I want to link to asset management systems. Great. Want to know how to link to asset management systems. Okay, great. So there's some opportunities there for us to follow up with you and to discuss what your current scenario is. If you'd like to either send us an email at info@Gis or directly to me, that's fine, or put some details in a comment in the chat box. That would be much appreciated. And look, and wherever you are with that is just perfect. So we're still early days. There's a whole conversation around classification systems. You know, do I use OmniClass? Do I use UniClass? Do I use IFC? How does A-SPEC fit in with all of that? So in simple terms, what we're looking at is whatever 3D model you look at, whatever process you have with BIM, because it's not a software, it's a process of aggregating different sources and managing those sources. We want to make sure that there is a schedule that you can extract or that is provided to you by the person that's giving you your 3D drawing, say a Revit drawing, a schedule that relates to the A-SPEC framework. We've previously undertaken this with our work in New Zealand, you know, and that was about 5 years ago, so we know what's possible there. We're not seeing the same level of maturity here yet, but we know that there's a lot of interest there. So we'll be exploring that with you further. And again, please make contact with us so we know who to have a conversation with if you'd like us to have a conversation with you. So our wrap up. Gabby mentioned about training, and I just want to clarify, these are paid training courses. Gabby is the facilitator. He's previously lectured at TAFE, and he's currently undertaking is it a Cert 4, Gabby, in training and assessment, so you can update your qualification and then train at TAFE again?
Yep.
Yep, great. Okay.
Yep.
So we run these once a month, and we'll run them more frequently if there's a need. And you can register your interest through Digital Hive or in the chat box here. And Rex, I saw your comment about an interest there. Yep, so that's been noted. API code list, the release will be in 2020. What's going to be involved with the release? We'd like you to trial it. We'd like you to see in your environment if it's going to work for you. And there is a commercial model for that. If you just want to search for a code, if you just want to download the specs from the website, from a spreadsheet, you're more than welcome. That will still be available. If you want to use the web service, there will be a commercial arrangement to enter into with that. Next releases of the updates. Next releases of updates. May 2021, unless. What's the unless? Well, unless we find something in our conversations that's going to impact the ability of the consultants to deliver the data that you need because we've got extra attributes and extra asset class, those sorts of things. So we'll make that decision following the completion of our series, which is culminated by the October 13th application. A-SPEC certification by June 30, 2021. We will have a draft in place of how that's going to look and what's going to be undertaken. More APIs planned for June 2021. W-SPEC, Tuesday, 29th September 2020, which is next week. A-SPEC show, have I mentioned that? Maybe once or twice or 10 times. Tuesday, 13th of October. Our intention, we have a number of vendors that are presenting their solutions, their A-SPEC solutions, and we're open to also councils to present what they're doing around their A-SPEC solution. So, you know, there's been some Menti polls in the background. You know, feel free to respond to them. You know, we'd really love your feedback before you head off about this forum today and anything else that you might like to add. My favorite quote, without data, you're just another person with an opinion.